History remembers him as the ultimate traitor, a man who plunged a blade into the heart of his closest friend. But Marcus Brutus didn't see himself as a murderer. He saw himself as a savior. The question is, at what point does a hero become a monster? Let's travel back to Rome. 44 BC, the Republic was gasping for air, suffocating under the ambition of one man, Gaius Julius Caesar. For Marcus Brutus, Caesar was more than a leader. He was a mentor, a father figure, and maybe even his biological father. Brutus was a man of deep philosophy, a Stoic who prized virtue above all else. He was also a direct descendant of the legendary hero who had founded the Republic centuries earlier. This legacy wasn't a gift. It was a heavy burden. Every day, the statues of his ancestors seemed to whisper a single word to him: duty. Now, Brutus had fought against Caesar before, siding with Pompey the Great to defend the Senate. When Pompey lost, Caesar didn't execute Brutus. He embraced him. He pardoned him and gave him a high position. Caesar truly loved Brutus, but as Caesar's power grew, from dictator to dictator for life, the whispers in Rome turned into a roar. Anonymous notes started appearing where Brutus worked. Messages like, "Brutus, are you asleep? And you are no true Brutus." The pressure was immense. In the shadows of the city, a conspiracy was brewing, led by the sharp-tongued Cassius. They needed a symbol for their cause, the most honorable man in Rome to justify an unthinkable act. Cassius knew that if he killed Caesar, it would be seen as a political assassination. But if Brutus did it, it would be an act of liberation. Slowly, the web closed in on the young philosopher. He was forced to choose between the man who loved him like a son and the republic that demanded his soul. His nights became sleepless. The air in Rome grew heavy, thick with tension. Brutus was about to make a choice that would echo for 2,000 years. As the Ides of March approached, strange omens filled the city. Seers warned of doom, and Caesar's wife dreamt of his murder. But Brutus had already sharpened his dagger. He convinced himself he wasn't killing a man, but an idea of tyranny. What he didn't know was that Caesar held one final secret, a secret that would transform this act of political principle into a betrayal so personal it would stay in history forever. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more stories like this. History remembers him as the ultimate traitor, a man who plunged a blade into the heart of his closest friend. But Marcus Brutus didn't see himself as a murderer. He saw himself as a savior. The real question is, at what point does a hero become a monster? Let's travel back to Rome. 44 BC, the Republic was gasping for air, suffocating under the ambition of one man, Gaius Julius Caesar. For Marcus Brutus, Caesar was more than just a leader. He was a mentor, a father figure, and maybe even his biological father. Brutus was a man of deep philosophy, a Stoic who prized virtue above all else. He was a direct descendant of the legendary hero who had founded the Republic centuries before. This family legacy wasn't a gift, it was a cage. Every time Brutus walked through Rome, the statues of his ancestors seemed to whisper a single word: duty. Now, while Caesar was conquering Gaul and famously crossing the Rubicon, Brutus was torn. He had actually fought against Caesar once, siding with Pompey the Great to protect the Senate. When Pompey lost, Caesar didn't execute Brutus. Instead, he embraced him, pardoned him, and even promoted him to high office. It was clear Caesar loved Brutus. But as Caesar's power grew from dictator to dictator for life, the whispers in Rome turned into a roar. Anonymous notes started appearing on Brutus's judicial seat. "Brutus, are you asleep?" One read. "You are no true Brutus," said another. The psychological pressure was immense. In the shadows of the city, a conspiracy was brewing, led by the sharp-tongued Cassius. They knew they needed a respectable face for their revolution. They needed the most honorable man in Rome to justify an unthinkable crime. Cassius understood that if he killed Caesar, it would be just a political assassination. But if Brutus did it, it would be seen as a liberation. Slowly, the web closed in around the young philosopher. He was forced to choose between the man who loved him like a son and the republic that demanded his soul. The nights grew sleepless. The very air in Rome felt heavy, thick with the scent of an approaching storm. Brutus was about to make a choice that would echo for 2,000 years. As the Ides of March approached, strange omens filled the city. Seers warned of doom, and Caesar's wife dreamt of his falling body. But Brutus had already sharpened his blade. He convinced himself that he wasn't killing a man, but an idea, the idea of a king. However, Caesar held one final secret, a secret that would completely change the meaning of that first strike. a secret that would make the betrayal personal beyond measure. What was it? Let's dive deeper. 23 wounds. That's what it took to kill a man who thought he was a god. But only one wound truly ended the life of Julius Caesar, the one delivered by the hand he trusted most. It was March 15th, 44 BC, the Ides of March. The Senate gathered at the theater of Pompey. Caesar entered, confident, brushing aside the dire warnings from his priests and even his own wife. The conspirators, nearly 60 of them, crowded around him like starving wolves. They moved in close, pretending to offer petitions, their daggers hidden in the folds of their togas. Then, the first strike, Casca's blade, grazed Caesar's shoulder. For a moment, Caesar fought back, his legendary strength flaring in a final burst of defiance. He was a lion surrounded by hyenas. But then, through the chaos and the flashing steel, his eyes met those of Marcus Brutus, his protege, his friend. Some even whispered, his son. Brutus stepped forward. He didn't shout, he didn't hesitate. He drove his dagger deep into Caesar's groin. This was the moment history froze. Legend says Caesar uttered those immortal words, "Et tu, Brute," and you, Brutus. In that second, the fight left him. He stopped struggling, pulled his toga over his head, refusing to let his enemies see him die, and fell at the base of Pompey's statue, the very man he had defeated to seize absolute power. The floor was slick with the blood of the most powerful man in the world. Brutus stood over the corpse, his hands crimson, shouting about liberty and the restoration of the Republic. But the silence that followed was terrifying. Brutus expected the people of Rome to cheer, to shower him with flowers and sing songs of freedom. Instead, he found terror. The shops closed, the streets emptied, the liberators were left standing in a ghost town with a dead dictator. And then, Brutus made a fatal mistake. He allowed Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal general, to live. He even allowed Antony to speak at Caesar's funeral, believing the people would understand his noble intentions. But as Antony stood over Caesar's bloody cloak, holding it up for the masses to see, the mood of Rome shifted from fear to a burning fury. Brutus had ended a life, but he had accidentally birthed a rage that would hunt him to the ends of the earth and tear the Republic apart forever. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, hit that like button and subscribe for more dives into history's most dramatic moments. See you next time. You can kill a dictator, but you cannot kill his ghost. Within days of the assassination, Brutus went from the savior of the Republic to the most wanted man in the world. The streets of Rome became a slaughterhouse. Mark Antony and Caesar's heir, the young and cold Octavian, formed an alliance of vengeance. Brutus and Cassius were forced to flee to the east, gathering legions from the provinces they once governed. The Republic was now a fractured mirror, reflecting only war. Brutus, ever the Stoic, tried to maintain order in his camps. He minted coins with his own face and the cap of liberty, a move that reeked of the very vanity he killed Caesar for. The irony was lost on no one. As the months passed, Brutus's mental state began to fracture. He was haunted. Ancient historians claim that one night, while Brutus sat alone in his tent, a massive, shadowy figure appeared before him. Brutus asked, "Who art thou?" The spirit replied, "I am thy evil genius. Brutus, thou shalt see me at Philippi." It was the ghost of Caesar, or perhaps, the ghost of his own guilt. He was a man who loved Rome more than his friend, but now he was leading an army against Rome itself. In 42 BC, the final confrontation loomed on the plains of Philippi, Greece. On one side, the vengeful heirs of Caesar, on the other, the last defenders of the Republic. Brutus was no general. He was a scholar. Cassius was the soldier, but even he was losing hope. They were fighting for a cause that was already dead. The Republic was a corpse, and they were just the maggots fighting over what was left. The first day of battle was a chaotic stalemate. Brutus won his wing, but Cassius, believing all was lost, took his own life. Brutus was left alone. As the sun set over the bloody fields, he looked toward the horizon and saw the shadow again. The ghost was back, and this time, it wasn't coming to talk. "By all means, fly," Brutus told his men, "but with your hands, not with your feet." In his final hour, the assassin realized that the only way to escape Caesar was to join him. The second battle at Philippi was a massacre. Brutus's men were exhausted, outnumbered, and demoralized. The spirit of the Republic had vanished. As his lines collapsed, Brutus retreated into the hills with a small group of friends. He looked up at the stars and quoted Greek tragedy. But he wasn't crying for himself. He was crying for Rome. He had finally understood a terrible truth. By killing Caesar, he had cleared the path for someone much worse. He had sought to prevent a monarchy, only to ensure the birth of an empire. Brutus refused to be captured. To be paraded through the streets of Rome in chains was a fate worse than death for a man of his lineage. One by one, he shook hands with each of his friends, thanking them for their loyalty. Then, he stepped toward his friend Strato and asked him to hold his sword steady. With a final breath, Marcus Brutus ran onto the blade. The man who had stabbed Caesar now used the same metal to pierce his own heart. When Mark Antony found the body, he didn't mock it. Instead, he took off his own expensive purple cloak and gently covered Brutus. He called him the noblest Roman of them all. Antony knew that while the other conspirators killed Caesar out of envy, Brutus was the only one who did it, because he truly believed it was the right thing to do for Rome. But Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus, was far less poetic. He ordered Brutus's head to be cut off and thrown at the feet of Caesar's statue in Rome, a brutal and symbolic end. So, was Brutus a hero of liberty or a traitor of friendship? History has never quite decided. Dante placed him in the lowest circle of hell, forever chewed in the jaws of Satan alongside Judas Iscariot. But to the French revolutionaries centuries later, he was a god of freedom, a symbol of resistance against tyranny. Perhaps he was simply a man caught between two worlds, the past he worshipped and the future he could unstop. In the end, Brutus learned the darkest truth of power. You can kill the man, but you can never kill the echo of his reign. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please like and subscribe for more dives into history.